Welcome to the broadcast. My name is John Mayfield, the Real Estate Tech Guy, and this is a study session on Sunday afternoon for Global Real Estate School students. Now, we will be going over forms of ownership. I'm going to actually put that up on the screen right now, and I want to make sure that we're broadcasting loud and clear, so I'm going to just double check a couple of things for us here and see if that is happening. So, hope you're having a great weekend. And while I'm just pulling this up very quickly, we will get started here in just 1 second. It looks like I am having let me try this one more. I actually put one too many letters on there. I think we're broadcasting loud and clear, but yep, looks like we are, so good. All right. So there we go. Just wanting to check one other item here before we get started. I need to find out why that is not working, but we'll work on that a little bit later. Well, again, thank you so much for joining. My name is John Mayfield. We're going to go over forms of ownership, which is my chapter 5. It's kind of interesting. You know, each testing agency will create different outlines and put the information in different orders. But at the end of the day, we cover all of the information. So don't panic too much if we're in a specific chapter and the outline for the PSI has it somewhere else. One of the interesting things, and that's why I created My Real Estate Exam Coach, is that with My Real Estate Exam Coach, it actually follows the PSI outline. And one of the goals before the end of the year is we hope to rearrange all of that content so it will follow the AMP outline as well. But just wanted you to be aware that even though some information is in some chapters, we do cover all of that on the real estate examination. So I was talking about My Real Estate Exam Coach, and I really should go out and show you this very quickly because it is, you can actually go to Global Real Estate School. I have a brand new book out now called Tips for Successfully Passing the Real Estate Exam and How to Generate Income in Your First 90 Days. So you can actually order that from Amazon. You can click on the link on our website. But here's My Real Estate Exam Coach, and you can watch a short video here. I'm really excited about this product because it actually follows the PSI outline, and so the content is created in a format to help you study and prepare for the real estate examination for the national content. And that's what's great about this. So if you're watching me and you're from Idaho, Washington, Hawaii, which we hope to be approved in Hawaii soon. That's one of my goals. I have the material pretty much done. But any of these other states, you can use My Real Estate Exam Coach in conjunction with your normal school. So check it out. You can even go to myrealestateexamcoach.com and you can order it there, find out more information. But it's really designed to be used with your existing real estate school program, regardless of what school you go to. I think it's always good to hear the information from another point of view. So you could be sitting through a great real estate school. There's lots of good real estate schools out there, but I think I can bring a whole new dimension to you. And I think between both what you're learning in your main course or main school and what you can learn from me through My Real Estate Exam Coach will just solidify you passing the real estate exam on the first attempt. That's what we want, right? Okay, let's get into the material. We're going to go over chapter 5 in my material. Again, chapter 5, but it's for business forms of ownership. So I'm going to go over here now to chapter 5. We're going to stream over to my MacBook. I'm going to drop this information down. So 6625 is the magic number.
Coach, will just solidify you passing.
And there I am right there.
That's what we want, right?
Okay, so we'll take myself off of there because you are watching already. Okay, I was just making sure that I was streaming live. Okay, so I actually need to go back over here, and here's chapter 5 right here. So want to just go through this. This is for those of you who are thinking about getting your real estate license. This is what Global Real Estate Schools program looks like. We're in one of the review modules now, so we can jump around anywhere we want to in the review modules. These are strictly for review. I did a lengthy video for my school students on Friday. I think I left it public because I know some of you are thinking about where should I go to my real estate school, and just wanted to show some of the tools and things we have at Global Real Estate School. I'm very proud of it. I do have a lady. I've gone through and tried to clean up as many of the grammatical errors and spelling errors as I could find, and as people report those. But I have a lady that's actually going through this for me right now, and so we're making updates. We're going to make a lot of new changes over the next couple of months. I'm very excited. I finished the book, and so now it's time to do a new total update on the course and some other information. So let's get into module 5, chapter 5, and I'm actually going to put up my PIP, my picture in the, see if we can, nope, I don't want that, so there we go. I think that's what I want right there. Okay, there we go. So hopefully I won't be in too much of the way as we go through the screen. So of course, with each module we have our learning objectives. So you can see that these would be your learning objectives for module 5.
For chapter 5. In this chapter, we will study about...
I'm trying to figure out, there we go, get the audio down. But you can see in this chapter, we really want to kind of go through some of the business forms of ownership. Some of you may have already had your own business. You could be a sole proprietor. You could have been in a business with a partnership. Perhaps it's a corporation. We talk about all of those throughout this course. Of course, I want to distinguish between what's a general and a limited partnership. And then questions they love to have on the exam is to identify the differences between a condominium and a cooperative, and then talk a little bit about how timeshares work. So have the learning objectives for each chapter, and you can see here that yes, I do use graphics, okay, or cartoon figures. Actually, when I started teaching my real estate school in 1987, I remembered prior to that going to my real estate school. Century 21 offered a school, and then there was a gentleman that owns Career Educations, Mark Barker. He still owns Career Educations, has a great school, is a wonderful friend of mine. And Mark always used cartoon graphics. And you know what I found about that is that I tended to remember the information easier on exam day because the cartoons just would tend to stick in your head easier than just a photograph. So try not to have a lot of information on each slide, as you can see. And again, I'm talking for some of the folks who are new that are thinking about a real estate school, but just to show you how some of the things are different. But on this specific slide, we're talking about or introducing you to the concept that there are different ways people can vest real estate in a business scenario. For example, I have my mother, when she started Mayfield Real Estate, she incorporated back in 1978. I found the paperwork the other day. I actually have I shouldn't say I found it. I was going through our corporate minutes because we have a corporate meeting every year in December, a shareholders meeting, and I was just kind of looking through some of the corporate things, and I needed some information. Actually, now it's all coming back to me now. It sounds like a Meatloaf song, doesn't it, right? But it's all coming back to me now. I was actually completing some paperwork, and I had to go to the Missouri Secretary of State. I looked at Mayfield Real Estate Inc., and I saw on there on the date that it was actually registered with the Secretary of State or established. And so I have Mayfield. I purchased the shares from my mother, and my wife and I own Mayfield Real Estate Inc. And through that, we have purchased real estate, rental properties. In fact, I was over at one of my rental properties today because we're rehabbing it, and I have some people that are putting a roof on it this weekend. And so, how did we buy that property? Well, we bought that in the corporation name, okay? And so, how does a corporation take title to property? Well, we're going to talk about that in this chapter. Most small businesses who are not incorporated, or they're not an LLC, which is a limited liability corporation, or they're not part of a partnership, they would be considered what is called a sole proprietorship. So let's talk about corporations. That's the first part here, and you can see this on the page. Corporations, the ownership. A corporation ownership is one way people form an organization to own real estate. Now, reasons for this form of organization could be, and these are things you should probably know for the exam. It's a central management by a board of directors. The big thing or big reason people form corporations is because of the limited liability. And what we mean by that is this. A corporation has limited liability to the corporation. So I mentioned we have a rental home, right? And it's owned by the corporation, Mayfield Real Estate Inc. And if something happened there and there was a lawsuit, the people who filed the lawsuit against Mayfield Real Estate Inc. could only go after the assets of the corporation. They couldn't come after my personal assets, okay? And so having a corporation does limit your liability, and that's something they love to ask on the exam. The central organization by a board of directors it's a pretty big deal, but that limited liability is one thing you want to remember. And secondly, there's this thing called double taxation. So the corporation's got to pay taxes on the profits it earns, but if it pays out dividends to the shareholders, then my wife and I will have to pay taxes too. So can you see how the corporation pays taxes, but also you as a shareholder could pay taxes as well? Another thing you want to remember about a corporation is that the stock is considered personal property, and it's easy to transfer the corporate shares. Now, they'd love to have this question on the exam. I've seen it, heard about it, seen it in other questions. I don't get to look at the exam, so when I say I've seen it, generally it's we've heard about it from others. But they love to ask a question about a broker listing a business that has corporate stock, and to sell that, what kind of license would the broker need to have? And the answer is a securities license. You just like you're going to school to sell real estate, stockbrokers have to go to school to get a securities license. So if you see a question about a real estate broker list a property and there's shares of stock involved, in order to transfer those shares of stock, that broker would have to have a security license. Okay, so just remember that. The negative reason, which I've just provided you, is that there's double taxation. Corporations can have double taxation. Now, one important note about corporations is the fact that they are regulated in the state where they are incorporated and the states where they do business. Very important to remember that. So don't forget that. So again, corporations, several things we could go over there: central management by the board of directors, limited liability to the amount of each shareholder's investment, easy transfer of corporate shares, the stock's considered personal property, and don't forget there's this double taxation, which is a negative item, and corporations are regulated in the state where they are incorporated and where they do business. Now let's talk about partnerships. It's interesting. I still remember this when I was a college. I was a business administration was my degree, and a marketing major, and I remember we had to take a corporation finance class as a required course, and I still remember when we came to the chapter on partnerships, our teacher had this piece of chalk in his hand, and he threw it across the room, and it exploded against the wall, and he yelled out this obscenity, these words that were not very well, he cussed. Okay, I guess I should just be blunt about it. And he said, we'll go on to the next chapter. I mean, he didn't even really spend much time on it. He kind of did, but he just said, you know what, you got to be real careful with a partnership. And you do. I've seen and heard of some of the best of friends who went together in a business, whether it would be buying real estate or rental property or whatever, and in their friendship over partnerships. Sometimes we can be good friends with people, but we don't really understand too much about how they work in a business scenario. So here's the deal with a partnership. There are two types of partnerships you need to know for the exam: a general partnership and a limited partnership. First, let's talk about a limited partnership, okay? The partners are actually silent. Now, what does that mean? It means they really don't have any say-so in the day-to-day business operations, and the other thing it means is they're only limited for the amount they've invested. Now, there's one general partner, and then you have all these other limited partners. I've told this story before, and I think I've told it in one of my YouTube videos, one of my podcasts possibly. But years ago, back in the 1980s, when the AT&T used to be the only telephone company, and so the government split up AT&T, and you had all these small phone companies that came about. And it's kind of funny because what have they done over time? They've all gone back to where we're back to like 2 or 3 major phone providers in the cellular realm, but they busted up AT&T, and you had all these new phone company starts. So there was a company that was coming to Park Hills. At that time it was called Flat River, where I grew up, and it was called TMI, and they had a phone company. And this guy came to town, and he recruited 30 different investors to invest $7,000 a piece in this new phone company called TMI. Now, he's the general partner, and the other 30 local Flat River folks were silent partners. Well, TMI went bankrupt. This guy skipped town. He was a general partner, so they were filing bankruptcy. And I knew a lot of those people who were owners in this TMI, and they were all worried they were going to be liable for these hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt this guy had created. And the answer is no. Why? Because in a limited liability partnership, you are only liable for the amount that you invest, okay? The general partner, the guy that skipped town, can be liable for everything, but limited partners are only liable to the amount they invest. Now, I always like to give a disclaimer because I'm not an attorney and I'm not a CPA, and yes, some people could be watching this out there. There could be some specific state statutes or laws, rules, and regulations around all of this that could be different than what I'm giving you per your state, okay? I'm just giving you the information that is required to pass the real estate exam, the higher level picture. I'm not an attorney and I'm not a CPA. So if you're watching this and there's yes, but if there's some caveat to that, yes, I agree with that, and don't think I'm trying to lead people astray, but I am trying to lead you to pass the real estate exam. And for the real estate exam, if you see a test question, limited partners are only liable for the amount that they have invested. The general partner, who's in charge of the day-to-day operations, will, in essence, be liable for a lot more than that, okay? So you can see on this slide, first, a limited partnership is one way to take title to real estate. With a limited partnership, the partners are actually silent. Note the operation still requires one general partner to oversee the entire operation and to report to the other partners. That's the guy that skipped town, okay? Because the partners are silent, they have little say-so over the operations of the business. However, the advantage to a limited partnership is that each investor is liable for only the amount they have invested. So, all of those people who invested in TMI were only liable for their $7,000 they invested. And here's an example. If you invest $10,000 in a limited partnership and the business becomes responsible for a total debt of $1 million, I would only lose my original $10,000 investment and no more. What about the general partner? Would they be responsible for more than the initial investment of $10,000? Yes. So don't forget that. And with a general partnership, 2, 3, 4 more general partners, each, and look at that in the second paragraph, each partner or investor is responsible for the debts of the partnership, regardless of the total losses. In other words, if you only invest $10,000 and the partnership loses $1 million, under a general partnership, you are liable for the entire amount as well as every other general partner in the general partnership. I remember hearing about a friend of mine who was in a general partnership, and his partner actually drove a car and had a car wreck and someone was killed, and I don't know all the details, but I just know the partnership was sued. They were owed a lot of money. The person I heard that I knew became liable for the debts of that partnership, even though he really had nothing to do with that. So, you got to be really careful in a general partnership. And that's one reason people like to incorporate, even if you're doing if two of you are going together for a business, because you want to limit your liability. Now, again, full legal disclaimer, I am not an attorney. Here's what I'm going to encourage you to do if you're thinking about going into business with someone else. Seek legal counsel. Go to your attorney, find out what they suggest, and talk to your financial planner, your CPA, I shouldn't say planner, but your accountant or CPA. Work between them and your attorney. Maybe you have a good attorney who's also a CPA or a tax attorney, and they can tell you the best ways to do this, because you really want to seek legal advice before you get in and do something that could jeopardize the finances of your entire estate. We talk about time sharing in this specific module. That's where you, and highlight this, I would definitely make a note, where you lease or own. See that? Lease or own real estate for a designated time period. Now, again, I don't mean to say I've seen this on the exam, we've heard about it. Sometimes you think of timeshares as just a rental, but it could be ownership interest too. So don't let that throw you off base. In fact, I've got a question coming up here on condominiums and cooperatives. They love to use, like a warehouse and a condominium or an office complex. There are warehouse condominium complexes. There are office condominium complexes. And so sometimes that wants to throw you off, because the norm, okay, is that we only think of residential condominium complexes. The norm is we only think of leasing timeshares. But you can have ownership, and you can have offices and industrial condominium complexes. So don't let those kind of throw you off there. Okay? But timeshare should be pretty easy to remember that. And then planned unit development. This is just another form of ownership that's popular in many parts of the country. It produces what are called these density patterns, so you can get the maximum number of dwellings in a space. And they also use things like overlay zoning. The developer plans the development and then seeks the local governing body to approve their plans. PUD owners own the lot underneath their house. The common areas are owned by the community association that is created in the PUD. And we just learned that in chapter 3 and 4. I think it was 4, but we talk about when 2 or more owners take title to property, they, tenancy in common or joint tenants. Well, with joint tenants, when one of the people die, what happens to their interest? Right of survivorship. Remember, their part goes to the other remaining owners. So you can see here with a PUD, the common areas are owned by the association, but as an association, those might be in what's called a tenancy in common. An estate is tenancy in common because if you die, your interest in those common areas will go to your heirs, okay? And you couldn't do that under a joint tenancy. So see how all of this stuff starts to weave and intertwine and come together. It makes sense when you can kind of look back at it and say, oh, I get it now. You need that type of ownership in order to make a condominium work and the common elements, common areas work with all the owners that are there. Okay, then we go over to the next slide on condominiums. And again, with next 2 slides, we talk about condominiums and we talk about cooperatives. So let's go back and look at condominiums. I'm just going to go through these with you. The owners own the unit or the block of air. They do not own the land underneath the unit. And they own the common areas, see that, as tenants in common. They have to own those as tenants in common, because if you own a condominium and you die, your condominium goes to your heirs, so that your heirs also get your interest in the common areas. Common areas would be things like parking lots and parks and swimming pools, tennis courts. And, just remember that, and this is what they love on the real estate examination, each owner is responsible for the taxes and the mortgage payment. Okay? Don't forget there's a master deed or declaration that has all of the legal descriptions, what you can and can't do, and that's normally recorded at the county courthouse. And then a cooperative, on the other hand, is another form of owning real estate. With a cooperative, the owners buy a long-term proprietary lease. That's what you have to remember. Condominium, look at that second paragraph. Each unit owned and classified as a freehold estate. We'll back up one more. Condominium, first paragraph, right under the first main point, the condominium owners own the unit or block of air. They do not own the land underneath the unit, but they do own the block of air. Now, here again, first paragraph, each owner is responsible for taxes and mortgage payment if they take a loan out on their condominium. With a cooperative, it's a long-term lease. And the cooperative, as you can see on the second paragraph, owns the real estate. The members in the cooperative just own stock. And what did we say stock was several slides earlier? Personal property, right? Stock is personal property. So each member pays a monthly payment to the cooperative, and the co-op will make a mortgage payment if there is one on the building, will pay for the taxes, and will pay for the insurance. So again, very, very important. You've got to know this for the exam. With a condominium, you actually have ownership in real estate. Even though it's a block of air, you have ownership in real estate. You get a legal description to that block of air. See how it's tying together? Remember in chapter 1 when I said, your rights, ownership rights, not only run horizontally, but they run vertically up and down. So if you want to sell your air rights off, you can do that. Remember I said that's why property on a beachfront goes so much higher? That's part of supply, demand. See how this is all kind of coming together? You build a condominium on the beach, you can sell blocks of air, so that property is going to be worth a lot more money. And so now you have a legal description, lot, whatever, or meets and bounds, and combination of the two. We can use more than one legal together, remember? So there could be this legal description, or there is a legal description for your condominium, your block of air, and you can go out and take a loan on that block of air. I mean, it's a unit. So the exterior to that condominium, the roof and the driveway and all of the yard and all of that, those are common areas, and they're normally owned by the association, the condominium, and you own those as tenants in common. You're shared. And remember, tenants in common, if you die, your interest goes to your heirs. So this is all kind of coming together for us on how it works now. But with a cooperative, it's just a long-term lease, and you're just buying stock in a corporation, personal property. So there's, you can, in a cooperative, you can be a little bit more choosy about who can come live in the building, where you can't be that choosy in a condominium. You see what I mean? How some of these things can come together. So, if you don't make your payment to the co-op, they've got to pick up the slack for you. And they're going to ask you questions like this. What happens if one of the cooperative owners does not pay their monthly payment to the cooperative? Well, the answer is, I should go back there. Maybe the answer pops up and I clicked the button too quickly, because these are the review slides. So we're going to see what happens. Then each co-op member in the building must make up the payment difference for the defaulting member. They love those questions on the exam. So they're real easy to answer. You just have to kind of dissect the problem and ask yourself, is this a lease? Is this stock they own? Or am I getting a deed to the property? Is there something that tips you off that says, well, if Joe Carr didn't make his payment, the bank's foreclosing, he must have had a condominium, right? You know, they're going to give you these scenarios about in a complex and so forth. Well, if it says something about lease or personal property, or the person doesn't pay and so everybody else has to pick up the share for them, it's a cooperative. So you'll be able to pick those out and you'll do just fine on those. You're going to see questions over the corporation. I'm sure you're going to see questions about partnerships and forms of ownership. Remember, limited liability. The limited partners are silent partners. There's one general day-to-day managing partner, but the silent partners are only liable for the amount they invest. General partner could be liable for all of the much more, I should say. And then under a regular partnership, a general partnership, everybody's going to be responsible not only for their original amount they put in, but all of the debts of the partnership. Okay? We talked about PUD, a planned unit development, as well. I think, I'm going to just look down here, right? I think that's all we have on this specific chapter. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that you were able to find some great information from how our course works. If you're thinking about going to real estate school, I hope maybe you get a feel for how I teach and instruct, and you're going to see lots of videos throughout the course like this where I'm teaching. There's lots of audio, plus you've got my YouTube channel, and you have, which I have right there, put my finger over there, I should put it right, I'm looking at my, right there we go, My Real Estate Exam Coach. It's right there. Go there, myrealestateexamcoach.com. Hey, I'm excited. I've ordered some new equipment that should be in sometime this month. I'm kind of rearranging some of my studio stuff and some of my live streaming, but got a neat little thing that should allow me to just press buttons, and I can go between cameras and do so much more. Right now I kind of have to look over here and look back and around, but I hope that you were able to learn some good information today. I hope you'll check out myrealestateexamcoach.com. Go there, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We always love positive feedback, and you can always reach out to me. Even if you're not in my school, if you have a question, just leave me a note here at Global Real Estate School. We'll be glad to answer that for you. Check us out, globalrealestateschool.com. We offer courses in Missouri, Kansas, South Dakota, Oklahoma, and Indiana, and hopefully coming soon to a state near you. But again, you can always use My Real Estate Exam Coach. It is a great product. It is right there. Well, it's right there. There it is, right there. Okay. I don't know. That was just fun to do. But have a great day, everyone. Talk to you soon.